Margaret Collins, often called the Kiss of Death by gangsters, was infamous in criminal circles. Her reputation was so lethal it could practically kill. Allegedly, a string of her romantic partners, each a prominent figure within organized crime, met untimely ends shortly after getting involved with her. These mysterious demises earned her the nickname Black Widow in the underworld, proving that love truly can be deadly. Reports suggest that every one of her relationships concluded with the death of her partner, with the timeline of doom ranging from a few days to a few months. It was as if she had a subscription to a deadly dating service. Collins was often seen mourning at the grave sites of these individuals, shedding tears that were as mysterious as the deaths themselves. Collins had a knack for attracting the worst of the worst, those who were evil, ruthless, and had little to lose. She could evoke both desire and fear, making even the most hardened criminals fall head over heels for her. Some of the most notorious gangsters found themselves captivated by her lethal charm, only for their infatuation to end in tragedy. These men often died under mysterious circumstances or in violent shootings, their lives cut short by the deadly allure of Collins. Almost every person she became romantically involved with met an untimely death, suggesting that love with her was truly a fatal attraction. It was as if she had a Midas touch, but instead of gold, everything she touched turned to a crime scene. Welcome to Wicked History, everyone. If there are other historical bizarreries you'd like to see explored, drop a suggestion in the comments. Now let's dive in. Margaret Collins, born on December 7, 1900, was no stranger to the world of organized crime, even as a teenager. Growing up in New York, she lived a life of luxury, embodying the image of a woman who had it all. However, beneath the glamorous exterior, Collins was more attracted to the thrill of violence than to the wealth and power of mobsters. She was notorious for always being armed, a walking arsenal who was rarely caught without her weapons. Her boldness and audacity were her trademarks, allowing her to navigate and assert herself in a world dominated by men with a death wish. Margaret lived life on her own terms, unapologetically. Whether as a brunette, blonde, or redhead, she changed her hair color as often as she changed romantic partners, mastering the art of disguise like a chameleon. Her gaze was icy, reflecting the ambition of someone perpetually hungry for power and adrenaline. Always fashionably attired and dripping in expensive jewelry, she exuded the glamour of a movie star, though her role was more femme fatale than leading lady. A woman of strong character and rebellious spirit, Margaret Collins was driven by a profound desire for freedom. Unafraid to challenge authority, she was vocal, confrontational, and had a penchant for provocation and violence. Her liberated lifestyle extended to her relationships, making her an irresistible figure in the eyes of many gangsters. They saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who lived dangerously, loved recklessly, and had a flair for turning their lives into a high-stakes game of survival. Her life was an ongoing spectacle of audacious defiance. It was as if she thrived on the chaos she created, with every new hair color marking a fresh start in her turbulent love life. Her icy gaze could freeze the bravest men in their tracks, yet her allure was undeniable. For the gangsters, being with Margaret was like playing Russian roulette, thrilling, dangerous, and almost certainly fatal. Her ability to attract and destroy in equal measure made her a legend in the underworld, a woman whose love story was written in blood and bullets. Margaret Collins recognized that her social standing was heavily influenced by the men she associated with, reflecting the broader dynamics of male-dominated social structures. Her life took a dramatic turn following the unexplained death of her fiancé in 1924, a turning point that seemed ripped from the script of a noir film. This tragic event prompted her to reassess her circumstances, ultimately leading her to pack her bags and leave New York. She relocated to Chicago shortly thereafter, seeking new opportunities and networks to bolster her position and influence in a fresh setting. This move marked a strategic effort to redefine her life and career amidst the complexities of her personal losses and societal challenges, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, or in her case, the crime scenes. Chicago, during the early 20th century, was a city bursting at the seams with growth, much of it fueled by the illegal trades of prostitution and alcohol, especially during the Prohibition era. The city's nightlife, though largely conducted in secret, was a buzzing hive of gambling, prostitution, and frequent violent confrontations. A far cry from the glamorous parties of New York, but certainly more exciting. This clandestine economy was controlled by well-dressed gangsters, criminals, and corrupt politicians, each playing their part in the dark symphony of the city's underbelly. These criminals, decked out in sharp suits and fedoras, manipulated the system with all the finesse of a seasoned poker player. They ensured the smooth operation of Chicago's illicit nightlife, turning the city into a playground for vice and violence. For Margaret, this move to Chicago was not just a change of scenery, but a strategic plunge into the heart of the action. It was an opportunity to carve out a new niche for herself amidst the swirling chaos and corruption, proving once again that she thrived where others feared to tread. In Chicago, Margaret Collins would face new challenges and new players, but with her knack for navigating male-dominated worlds and her taste for danger, she was more than ready. Her life was about to get even more thrilling, and in the deadly game of crime and power, she was always ready to roll the dice. The thriving illegal businesses in Chicago contributed significantly to the city's reputation as the epicenter of organized crime in America. For many residents, involvement in these activities presented a golden opportunity to elevate their quality of life, albeit through dubious means. The city became a battleground for rival gangs, particularly those formed by immigrants from the old continent, including Irish and Italian factions, each vying for dominance in the criminal underworld. Amidst this turbulent environment, Margaret Collins made a shrewd move by aligning herself with the Irish gang. This calculated decision positioned her strategically within Chicago's intricate web of power and crime, ensuring she was always at the heart of the action. Chicago, in the early 20th century, was also a place where superstition ran as deep as the corruption. Members of the mafia were known for their adherence to various omens and curses, the most notorious being the Curse of the Green Chair. This particular chair, located in the office of police officer William Showmaker, was a source of deep-seated fear among gangsters. It was widely believed that anyone interrogated while sitting in this green-upholstered chair would soon meet their demise. This belief seemed to be confirmed by several ominous incidents, turning the chair into an emblem of impending doom. Adding to the city's rich tapestry of superstitions was the arrival of Margaret Collins. Known for her striking beauty and lethal charm, she quickly became the center of a new urban legend. This narrative suggested that anyone who became romantically involved with her was doomed to suffer misfortune, a legend that only grew stronger with each mysterious death of her suitors. Much like the Curse of the Green Chair, this legend added to the aura of mystery and fear surrounding the figures and objects associated with Chicago's underworld. Margaret Collins became a living legend herself, a femme fatale whose love life was as perilous as the gangster turf wars raging around her. She embodied the perfect storm of allure and danger, a figure as mesmerizing as she was terrifying. Her reputation for bringing bad luck to those who fell for her only solidified her status as one of the most enigmatic and feared women in the city's criminal circles. Collins quickly attracted the attention of John Sheehy, a rising star within the North Side gang, which was predominantly Irish. Sheehy, who had recently advanced within the gang's ranks, specialized in smuggling operations. His role was crucial in navigating the illegal trade routes that were essential to the gang's economic interests, particularly during the Prohibition era, when such activities were highly profitable. This encounter marked the beginning of Collins's deeper involvement with key figures within Chicago's organized crime scene, as she seamlessly slipped into the murky waters of bootlegging and smuggling. John Sheehy, known in the criminal underworld as Dandy Jack, was a man whose small stature was offset by a robust physique and a meticulously neat appearance. These traits, combined with his distinctive style, contributed to his nickname and reputation. Dandy Jack was often seen in public with Margaret Collins, whose striking appearance and bobbed hair made them a conspicuous pair. They were a spectacle of contrasts, his dapper elegance against her chilling beauty, attracting attention wherever they went. Margaret's background was as mysterious as the deaths that followed her, but her physical appearance was undeniably memorable. A journalist once described her blue eyes as clear as glass just polished with a damp cloth, highlighting their striking clarity. Her features were harsh and chilling, with thin lips that added to her formidable presence. Despite, or perhaps because of, her intimidating appearance, Margaret exuded a blend of fragility and determination that both intrigued and unsettled those around her. Their relationship was the talk of the town, a dangerous liaison between two power players in Chicago's criminal underworld. Dandy Jack's smuggling operations thrived, his roots as well maintained as his wardrobe, while Margaret's reputation continued to grow, her name whispered in the shadowy corners of speakeasies and backrooms. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, a deadly duo navigating the treacherous waters of Prohibition-era crime with a chilling grace. In a city rife with violence and superstition, Margaret Collins and Dandy Jack became living legends. Their story was one of ambition, power, and a love that was as dangerous as it was compelling. Margaret's enigmatic presence coupled with Jack's criminal acumen created a partnership that was as profitable as it was perilous. They were the embodiment of Chicago's underworld, glamorous, ruthless, and always one step away from disaster. On December 7th, 1923, John Sheehy decided to celebrate Margaret Collins's birthday by taking her to the Rendezvous Cafe in Chicago, located at 626 Diversey Parkway. The cafe, known for being managed by gang affiliates, was famous for its sophisticated musical ensemble and dancers. That evening, the venue hosted a grand celebration with 500 select guests from among the city's elite. The sound of jazz filled the air, and the atmosphere was vibrant as attendees enjoyed gin and lively entertainment, making it the perfect spot for a birthday bash and potential crime scene. However, Margaret had a peculiar party trick that surfaced particularly when she drank, which was often. After consuming alcohol, she had a habit of throwing ice cubes at the musicians performing. Her impulse was especially strong if the musicians were redheads, as if their fiery hair color triggered her frosty behavior. This quirk, adding to her distinctive and somewhat controversial reputation, was well noted among her social circles. It seems Margaret enjoyed cooling down the hot-tempered musicians with her icy missiles. During the celebration, Margaret questioned Sheehy's influence, provoking him by wondering aloud if he truly held the sway he purported to, given his inability to expedite her request. In an impulsive effort to prove his mettle, Sheehy stormed into the kitchen, armed with a revolver in each hand. His reaction was more dramatic than a Shakespearean tragedy, and unfortunately, just as deadly. Agitated and eager to demonstrate his power, Sheehy fatally shot the waiter who had delayed Margaret's request and a steward who obstructed his path. The gunfire prompted an immediate police response. Officers arrived at the scene and were met with shots from Sheehy, turning the cafe into an impromptu Wild West saloon. In the ensuing exchange, Sheehy injured a police officer, who then retaliated, hitting Sheehy with several bullets. Wounded and bleeding, Sheehy staggered, trying to maintain his balance by holding onto tables, rejecting help from bystanders before collapsing to the floor. He was transported to a hospital where he died the following day, providing a tragic climax to his attempt at chivalry. His last words reportedly were, "Tell them I was full of booze and didn't know what I was doing." Margaret was acquitted of any involvement in the violent events, her innocence as clear as the gin she frequently enjoyed. Following her acquittal by Judge Eberhardt, who handled the case, Margaret walked out of the courtroom free, her high heels clicking victoriously against the floor. This outcome was significant given that Dandy Jack, well known to the police with nearly 20 possible charges against him, had managed to avoid arrest and retribution for 10 years of criminal activity. In the aftermath, Margaret purchased a magnificent tombstone for Sheehy at Mount Carmel Cemetery and briefly adopted widow's attire in mourning. However, the color black did not suit her, and her period of grief was notably brief. 2 weeks later, Margaret re-emerged on the social scene, this time sporting blonde hair. She was seen accompanying John Phillips, a man in his 30s known for his involvement in the criminal underworld as a supplier of alcohol to speakeasies. These illicit bars operated during the Prohibition era, where patrons were encouraged to speak quietly to avoid attracting police attention, though keeping things quiet around Margaret was a challenge in itself. Phillips and Collins' relationship progressed over the following months, and by summer, he introduced her to another notable establishment within the criminal circuit. They visited the Northern Lights Cafe, located at 6342 Broadway Street, a cabaret under the control of the South Gang. predominantly Italian. This venue was another hub in the intricate network of speakeasies and criminal activities that defined the era's underground social life. During her visit, Margaret became offended by the appearance of one of the musicians on stage. Never one to let a slight go unchallenged, she insisted that her companion, John Phillips, defend her honor. In response, Phillips confronted the musician and escalated the situation by firing shots at the chandelier bulbs to emphasize his point, plunging the venue into semi-darkness. It was the Prohibition-era version of mood lighting, if your mood was impending chaos. The managers of the cabaret intervened in an attempt to eject him, which led to a general melee within the establishment. The confrontation intensified when Phillips, at Margaret's urging, slapped the singer on stage and brandished his weapon again, this time threatening the cabaret's managers. It seems Margaret's idea of a good time always involved someone brandishing a firearm. Upon the arrival of the police, Phillips decided to take his criminal behavior up a notch. Instead of de-escalating the situation, he took 2 officers hostage, attempting to force them into his car while pointing a gun at them. The standoff ended when Phillips was critically injured by a gunshot from another police officer, stopping him from escaping with the hostages. So, Margaret found herself once again returning to the funeral home, where she was becoming a bit too familiar with the decor. This pattern of events contributed to her gaining a sinister reputation in the criminal underworld, where she was ominously dubbed the girl with the deadly kiss. Rumors circulated that becoming romantically involved with her was akin to courting death itself, as her past partners consistently met violent ends. It seems that dating Margaret was less of a romantic escapade and more of a high-stakes game of Russian roulette, where the only certainty was an early appointment with the undertaker. Known for frequently changing her appearance, Margaret switched her hair color once again. By October 1924, she had chosen a fiery redhead look, turning heads and adding a spark to her already notorious persona. That month, she prepared for a significant social engagement, a dinner hosted by Dean O'Banion, one of the most powerful figures in the city. This dinner represented a pivotal moment, potentially positioning her within the inner circles of the city's elite and notorious characters, further solidifying her complex and controversial standing in Chicago's turbulent social landscape. Dean O'Banion, an Irish-born mobster, led the North Side gang in Chicago with a notorious reputation for violence and political manipulation. Known for his unique ambidexterity, which served him more in shootings than in writing, O'Banion carried a charm that belied his dangerous nature. His blue eyes, often described as laughing, could turn fierce with little provocation. Despite being implicated in around 20 murders, he had managed to evade legal repercussions, thanks in part to his control over local Irish votes and the manipulation of ballot boxes. O'Banion's influence extended into local politics, with many city Democrats turning a blind eye to his criminal activities in hopes of securing his favor. His appearance was always impeccable, dressed with the elegance of an English lord, complete with professionally manicured nails and neatly parted wavy hair, traits that made him a figure matching the ambitions of Margaret Collins. When Margaret arrived at O'Banion's dinner, she did so with her usual flair for drama and danger, her new red hair as vibrant as the blood that seemed to follow her every move. The dinner was a veritable who's who of Chicago's underworld, with powerful mobsters, crooked politicians, and socialites mingling under the dim glow of chandeliers. As jazz music played softly in the background, the room buzzed with whispered conversations about alliances and betrayals, deals and double crosses. Margaret knew that impressing O'Banion could open new doors for her, allowing her to climb even higher in the city's criminal echelons, and impress she did. With her sharp wit and fearless demeanor, she navigated the evening with the grace of a seasoned socialite and the cunning of a master manipulator. She exchanged pleasantries and veiled threats with equal ease, leaving a lasting impression on all who crossed her path. Throughout the evening, O'Banion's laughing eyes followed her with interest. He appreciated her boldness and the air of mystery she carried. When the dinner concluded, Margaret had secured her place in O'Banion's inner circle, much to the envy of others vying for his favor. However, in the world of Chicago's organized crime, rising stars often burned out quickly. Margaret's new redhead look was a symbol of her fiery ambition, but also a reminder of the danger that accompanied her every move. In the days that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Margaret Collins, the girl with the deadly kiss, was now dining with the devil himself. For Margaret, the dinner with O'Banion was more than just a social engagement. It was a declaration of intent. She was here to stay, and she would continue to navigate the treacherous waters of Chicago's underworld with the same lethal charm and audacity that had made her infamous. After all, in a city where alliances could shift as quickly as the wind and loyalty was often bought rather than earned, Margaret Collins was a master of the game, always ready to roll the dice and take her chances. Apart from his gang affiliations, O'Banion also had a legitimate business. He was a florist. This profession served as a front for his underworld dealings, providing an essential service for mob funerals, often preparing wreaths even before deaths were officially announced. This eerie foresight into the criminal underworld showcased his deep connections and added a macabre twist to his floral arrangements. It was as if he had a sixth sense for impending doom, which made him an attractive figure for Margaret, who seemed to have a similar talent. Dean O'Banion's affinity for flowers may trace back to a poignant childhood memory. His mother's funeral at age 5, where the floral arrangements were the only source of beauty amidst the overwhelming grief. As an altar boy, Dean was exposed to religious teachings, but as he grew older, he drifted away from these principles, lured by the temptations of vice. It seems the only gospel he preached as an adult was one of bullets and booze. Before rising to prominence as a mob leader, O'Banion tried his hand as a saloon singer. However, the allure of the criminal life proved stronger, and he transitioned from vocalizing to gunpowder, taking charge of the North Side gang. His territory was near Little Hell, a notorious area where Sicilian gangs maintained a strong presence. Despite the high crime rates and daily violence in these areas, O'Banion demonstrated a complex character that blended ruthlessness with surprising acts of altruism. O'Banion was known for his generosity, often driving through Chicago's poorest neighborhoods to distribute clothes, food, and funds for medical expenses to the needy. It was quite the contrast: by day a benevolent benefactor, by night a ruthless gangster. This duality extended to his personal life as well. While leading a life marked by criminal activities and violence, he maintained a stable and seemingly loving relationship with his wife Viola. The couple was regarded as one of the most stable unions within the crime syndicate. Their marriage was as solid as a rock, if not for the occasional hail of bullets that threatened to break it. Margaret Collins, while closely connected to O'Banion professionally, and rumored to have received financial support akin to a widow's pension from him, was actually a friend of Viola's. In the complex web of gangland relationships, loyalty was not just about allegiance to one's partners, but also involved a code of honor towards the companions of fellow gangsters. Margaret's involvement with O'Banion and his florist business gave her access to both the beauty and brutality of the mobster lifestyle. It's ironic that a man known for arranging flowers also had a hand in arranging funerals, often for his enemies. One short month after he had met Margaret, Dean O'Banion's life came to a violent end. On November 10, 1924, O'Banion was in his flower shop, Schofield's Flower Shop, located on North State Street in Chicago. This shop served as a front for his criminal activities, where he often conducted underworld dealings amidst the fragrant chaos of floral arrangements. On that fateful day, O'Banion was clipping chrysanthemums in the back room. 3 men entered the shop, pretending to be customers. They shook his hand, but this handshake was a deadly ruse. One of the men held onto O'Banion's hand, immobilizing him while the others drew their guns and shot him multiple times. O'Banion died instantly from the gunshot wounds, marking the end of his dual life as both florist and mobster. The assassination was reportedly ordered by rival gang leaders who had formed an alliance against him, including members from the South Side gang led by Al Capone and the Jenner brothers from the West Side. The murder was a result of escalating tensions and competition over control of lucrative bootlegging operations in the city. O'Banion's death marked a significant turning point in Chicago's gangland history, triggering a brutal gang war that would engulf the city for years to come. In the end, the man who had balanced the beauty of chrysanthemums with the brutality of gangland politics met his demise surrounded by the very flowers that symbolized both his legitimate front and his criminal underbelly. The irony was not lost on those who knew him. Dino Banyan, the mobster florist, had arranged one too many funerals and ultimately found himself the centerpiece of his own. His death unleashed a torrent of violence, turning the streets of Chicago into a battlefield where bouquets and bullets were the order of the day. After the death of Dino Banyan, Margaret Collins' life continued to be tumultuous and filled with drama. Her routine included frequent hair appointments, changing her hair color with each new romantic involvement, enduring police interrogations, and most poignantly maintaining the graves of 7 former lovers, all gangsters with whom she had been involved. Despite her history of loss, Margaret continued to mourn passionately at each funeral, showing no signs of retreating from her high-profile lifestyle. In a way, she was Chicago's most devoted mourner, attending more gangster funerals than any mob priest. In June 1931, her actions led to legal trouble when she and a friend were arrested for stealing designer dresses from a boutique. Clearly, Margaret had a taste for the finer things in life, even if it meant acquiring them illicitly. The court sentenced her to community service, an ironic twist for someone more accustomed to breaking laws than following them. Despite her enduring attractiveness, Margaret's reputation began to deter potential suitors. Chicago's gangsters, superstitious and wary, started to view her as a harbinger of bad luck, fearing that her presence in their lives might lead to their downfall. Her name became associated not just with glamour, but also with a fatal curse that seemed to strike those closest to her in the criminal underworld. Margaret's frequent hair color changes became a symbol of her ever-shifting alliances and the fleeting nature of her relationships. Each new hue heralded another chapter in her dramatic life, with each chapter inevitably ending in tragedy. As she navigated the dangerous waters of Chicago's criminal elite, her allure remained potent, but it now carried a dark shadow. The whispers in the speakeasies and underworld circles grew louder. Beware the redhead, the blonde, the brunette, they all spell doom if their name is Margaret Collins. In November 1932, Margaret Collins crossed paths with Saul Feldman, a gangster known as the Bulldog, who was as notorious for his criminal activities as he was for his romantic inclinations. Feldman's criminal repertoire included a specialization in assaults and battery, a reputation underscored by the time he bit a man's ear during a fight, refusing to let go until he emerged victorious. Despite Margaret's infamous history and the superstitions surrounding her, Feldman was undeterred, amused by the rumors of a curse associated with the glamorous platinum blonde. He embraced life with zest, dismissing the idea that his association with Margaret could lead to his downfall. However, the relationship followed a tragic pattern reminiscent of Margaret's past involvements. Just 3 months after they met, in January 1933, Feldman was between life and death at St. Cabrini Hospital, located in the heart of an Italian neighborhood. The incident that led to his critical condition occurred when Feldman attempted to break into a store window on Michigan Avenue to steal 2 fur coats. A police officer arrived on the scene, ordered him to surrender, and when he did not comply, the officer opened fire, critically injuring him. Newspapers were quick to sensationalize the incident with headlines proclaiming, "The kiss of death strikes again," and the police wonder if it will bring a terrible end to Saul Feldman. This narrative gained traction after police reported seeing Margaret, notoriously dubbed the Kiss of Death, kissing Feldman in the hospital where he was recovering from a gunshot wound. The injury was sustained during an encounter with a police officer who suspected him of criminal activity. Despite the ominous headlines and her grim reputation, Margaret was determined to alter the course of events this time around. She visited Feldman daily in the hospital, tending to him in an attempt to dispel the myth of the curse associated with her. This commitment suggested a departure from her past pattern, hinting at a possible change in her usually tragic love stories. The public and media watched closely, speculating whether this relationship could defy the fatal outcomes that seemed to follow Margaret's romantic endeavors. The notorious curse that seemed to shadow Margaret Collins appeared to be broken when, after a 2-week stay in intensive care, Saul Feldman recovered sufficiently to be discharged. However, the reprieve was short-lived. On April 5, 1933, during a court appearance for his criminal activities, Feldman suddenly screamed and collapsed, falling unconscious in the courtroom. The dramatic scene intensified when his defense attorney, Samuel Hoffman, disclosed the identity of Feldman's mistress, Margaret Collins, prompting a murmur of horror among those present. This revelation impacted the proceedings significantly. The judges, aware of Margaret's infamous reputation and the fate of her previous partners, were hesitant to convict Feldman. There was a palpable fear that doing so might precipitate his death, adding another tragic chapter to the legacy of the so-called kiss of death. This fear led to a leniency that might not have been granted under different circumstances. Saul Feldman's recovery from his lung infection, caused by a wound that turned into an abscess, was further complicated by personal turmoil. His trial was postponed to early July 1933 to allow him more time to recover and perhaps reconsider his relationship with Margaret Collins. However, before the rescheduled trial could take place, an incident at his sister's wedding exacerbated tensions between Saul and Margaret. At the wedding, Margaret danced closely with another man, triggering Saul's jealousy. In a fit of rage, he smashed a beer bottle over her head, causing her to lose consciousness. The violent act prompted an immediate response from 3 young doctors at the event, who, disregarding their professional oath, physically assaulted Saul, leaving him with bruises and broken ribs. Despite the assault, when questioned by the police that night, Margaret expressed her willingness to forgive Saul and continue their relationship, a classic case of tumultuous love. Saul, on the other hand, declared himself done with Margaret, attributing his near-death experiences to her supposedly toxic influence. This cycle of violence and reconciliation reached its peak with Saul's decision to end the relationship, reflecting the often tragic nature of relationships within the gangster milieu. Heartbroken and determined to start anew, Margaret changed her identity, altered her hair color once again, and left the city, intent on disappearing and leaving her notorious past behind. Despite her attempts to fade into obscurity by changing her identity and hair color, Margaret could not relinquish her penchant for luxury, particularly her love for furs. In February, Margaret, now going by the alias Faye Sullivan, was apprehended by Milwaukee police in Gary, Indiana. She and 2 accomplices were caught stealing pelts from a Sears, Roebuck & Company store. Although she attempted to conceal her identity, the fingerprints and mugshots forwarded to Chicago revealed her true identity. Her bail was set at $1,000, a sum unexpectedly covered by another mobster who likely intended the money for one of Margaret's fellow detainees. Whether out of ignorance of her notorious past or simple oversight, this mobster inadvertently assisted Margaret. Benefiting from this mix-up and still recovering from a recent illness and hospital stay, Margaret took the bail money as a fortunate windfall. This incident underscored her enduring presence in the criminal landscape, a true femme fatale of Chicago, always surviving, adapting, and inadvertently entangling others in her fateful narrative. In 1943, Margaret Collins drastically changed her life by marrying a businessman. This marked a significant turning point as she left behind her tumultuous past, including her struggles with alcoholism, her nights steeped in the underworld, her history of shoplifting, and her romantic involvements with gangsters. She also abandoned her signature habit of frequently changing her hair color. Together, Margaret and her husband embarked on a new venture, purchasing a toy store, symbolizing a complete departure from her previous life. This transformation into a business owner and wife highlighted her desire to reinvent herself and live a life far removed from her past exploits. Margaret's efforts to erase her former identity were so effective that much of her later life, including the circumstances and date of her death, remains shrouded in mystery. Her story underscores the profound capacity for change and the lengths to which someone can go to distance themselves from a notorious past, ultimately becoming a woman determined to be forgotten.